For week 3 of this class, there are actually only 2 assignments, which is less than there were in the previous 2 weeks of the class. The first one is the only reflection assignment for the week. And in that reflection, it's sort of a little bit of a follow-up to a reflection that you did before about scientific reasoning and about the test that was used, developed by Tony Lawson, on measuring the construct of science or scientific reasoning. And the reason why you're going to revisit it this week in week 3 is because the theme of this week really is constructs and how to measure constructs, because when you investigate the value of certain studies or research in your field, measuring constructs and how constructs are measured is going to be absolutely crucial in being able to understand and interpret the results of any kind of study that relates to variables of interest that are in fact constructs, for you especially. So what you're going to do, and I think it's a really cool thing, is you're going to look at that test again, and you're going to read, first of all, you'll read an article that Lawson wrote about the development of that instrument and the measures that he took to try and validate it. And just going back to validation for just a second, generally speaking, when we use the word validity in research and even in assessment in general, we're really talking about, does the thing that you want to measure, are you actually measuring it? And that's validity. How well does it do? How well of a job does your procedure do in measuring what you want? And of course, with constructs, that can be kind of challenging because constructs can only be defined by certain performances or behaviors, and so it's important to understand how you might be able to develop and then validate those measures that you develop to try and measure a construct. So Lawson developed that instrument, and then he wrote an article and published an article in an academic journal about how he did it. And so you're going to look at that article and reflect on that, but then you're also going to reflect on 2 related articles where researchers had questions about Lawson's test of reasoning, of scientific reasoning. And so, it's 2 separate published research articles at 2 different times. And those articles present some procedures and some data and some analyses that kind of call into question the validity of those items, or of the test in general. So you're going to be reflecting on that, and in the process, you'll be able to see the kind of rigor that is behind scientifically establishing things like measuring constructs, and that kind of thing is always controversial in some ways. It's impossible to be completely objective when you're trying to do something like measure constructs in education. So that's what the reflection is about this week, and the readings are going to be those articles that I discussed. And then you're going to be doing a group project number 3, and it's a group project. And in that project, you are going to work with 2 other students in the class to identify 2 different constructs. One of them will be an academic construct, and that is something that would be measured, that is trying to measure some content-related construct. And then the other one is an affective construct, and that is something that might be related to student attitudes. And I provide you in the project information some examples of what I mean by those 2 different types of constructs. So you're going to identify those, and then the group is going to work together to try and create some items that would hopefully do a good job of measuring those constructs. And I do want to say this about the grouping. So I went through the information that students submitted at the beginning of the class about what their area of focus is going to be as a teacher, and whether they have experience in the classroom in content areas and grade levels. And although the information was kind of sparse, I tried to create groups that are pretty homogeneous with respect to educators who either currently or want to teach at a particular grade level or subject area. So hopefully you'll be in one of those groups where you all can focus on measuring your selected constructs in the same way, since you have the same types of target population members, your students. But not all the groups. I wasn't able to do that for all the groups. And so you might be in a group where somebody teaches in secondary ed and somebody teaches in primary grade, and you'll just have to work around that, which is okay, because you can still identify the same construct. You're just going to have a slightly different way of measuring it because of reading levels and levels of kind of pre-existing knowledge. For example, though, I'll just give you for example, an affective construct might be that the students enjoy learning about what they're learning in math, for example. So you're not identifying specifically what type of math is being learned, just that they enjoy learning about the math that they're learning. So obviously that construct is applicable to students at any grade level, but how you would measure it would be a little bit different, because you'll have obviously you'll ask questions in a different way if you're talking to kindergartners versus if you're wanting students in high school to respond to survey items or that kind of thing. Now, in the process of completing your group project, you're going to be asked to apply some of the information that are in some of the notes for Part 3. So just to kind of give you just a broad overview of what the Part 3 notes address, the first part addresses sampling techniques. So if you were going to sort of try out how you're going to measure a construct, and you would want to sample members of the target population, and it's just information about sampling. Then there's a little bit of information about the different types of data that you might collect if you were creating a scale, which you will be creating some scale items for your affective construct. There's some detailed information about developing survey items in the Part 3 of the notes. And then finally, there's some information about validity, about the different ways that researchers go about collecting evidence that what they develop in terms of measuring things are actually valid. And so there's different types of validity, and I'm just going to ask you to consider some of those. Now, one last thing that I want to talk about regarding the project is that I am asking all of you to use AI to help support the development of your project together. And as part of that, I've asked you to create a shared or a group chat in ChatGPT so that the three of you could actually sit down together, in separate locations, but at the same time, and be logged into the same ChatGPT chat. And then you can talk to each other as well as the AI agent for support. And you can choose to use the you could have a Zoom window up with all three of you in the Zoom window. You could have a conference call on your phone, or you could and you can do that and have the chat thing open. Or you can just choose to just be online and just talk via texting within the chat environment. So I'll be curious to learn a little more about what you all decided to do with that. And I'm going to ask you a question about doing that as part of the project, just to reflect on the process. So, so there are 2 group projects in the class, and this is the first one of the 2. And it shouldn't take that long to be together. I know it's going to be challenging to try and arrange a time when all 3 of you can meet up online at some point. But my guess is you could probably get this whole project completed within an hour of conversing, sharing, and reflecting. And then I've created roles for the 3 of you so that the process of developing the project and getting it submitted and all of that is shared by all 3 of you. And you'll see that when you look at the project information. So after reviewing all of that and reaching out to your group members, then please, if there's any issues or you have any questions about this, again, don't hesitate to reach out to contact me. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the experiences this week, and I hope the working in groups isn't too problematic for you. But hopefully it will be something that helps establish more of a sense of community in this class for you in week 3. So good luck with that.